If you walk through a random cross-section of Britain in 2019, what would you find? This summer, Richard Smith is walking straight across Britain at its broadest, from Felixstowe on the Suffolk coast through Oxfordshire to Fishguard in Pembrokeshire, along the line 52 degrees north, which is a significant number. He'll tell you about that. And why is he doing it? Well, after recently suffering loss in the family, he's hoping to find some positivity and hope through the countryside, and he's spreading the most incredible messages, which you're going to hear about. But welcome. It's nice to see you.
Thanks very much, Kat. Thanks for having me on.
This is quite some route. Have you sort of worked it out in mileage, as it were?
Yes, well, as the crow flies, it's 270 miles. But a friend looked at my maps and I zigzag on footpaths around the 52nd parallel north. So I think in actual fact, I'll probably walk 350 or 400 miles.
Have you always been a walker, or is this sort of come about because of what's happened in the last 5 years?
Layers and layers of connection. So my mum was from Essex, and 52 degrees cut through Essex. My dad's parents were from Gloucestershire and South Wales, which is the second part of the walk. They were walkers and met actually in Reading Rambling Club. So I exist because of walking. So always there were 5 pairs of walking boots, by the front door. So walking's sort of in our blood. So absolutely, it was a natural thing to do, I think.
And I suppose, when you've suffered so much bereavement, going for a walk, clearing your mind, thinking, remembering is a really important thing to do.
I think it's the top recommendation, isn't it? Just move. With any sort of mental health issue, particularly bereavement, is just get out and well, Heather always used to talk about fresh air and exercise, and my kids joke about it. If ever they're a bit low, they say, "Oh, I suppose you're going to say I need some fresh air and exercise." Well, yes, get out. She had cancer for 10 years. So she was diagnosed as soon as our third child was born, really, when he was 1. But the chemotherapy kept her going for 10 years, which was great. But then she took a downturn just about 5 years ago and died in June 2014.
When you'll never forget that day that she was delivered that diagnosis, of course, because that is, it's a game changer, it's a life changer. It's
actually today, the 7th of June 2014, and anyone who's been through this will know that these dates get burned in your mind. 7th of June was the date she was told, that's it, there's no more treatment, and then she lived another couple of weeks till the 25th. So that's quite a thing. Many people experience this, and you just got to choose how to respond to that, and what do you do? I was so encouraged listening to Frank on your show yesterday, and the loss, the bereavement of all his friends that he suffered, and look how the resilience that he's brought to that through the rest of his life. So we all have to choose how to respond, really.
We often talk to people that have had that diagnosis, and they have this incredible attitude, this sort of carry on, I'm going to fight this sort of attitude. Yeah. And often it's the people around the cancer fighter that actually it affects far more, because I guess you as Heather's husband just felt hopeless, helpless.
Well, yes. I mean, the saddest thing is actually for her life. So she's had 47 years, and the thing that cuts me up and the wider family up most is that she's now not getting to see her 3 children become young adults and blossoming into their life. So that the saddest thing is for her life. But then you think about the spouse and the wider family. Do everything you can, and to be honest, it's not an easy path, and I think some people cope with it well. I've personally struggled. It's up and down, and I'll be frank, it's still raw. There's this thing called the dual process model of looking backwards and looking forwards, and that's a little bit of an allegory to the line as well. The line across, but you look backwards and you look forwards. I want to be in 2014. Why would I want to leave my pal, my friend, who I've had 3 children with? But I'm only 52. The rest of my life's ahead. So it's trying to work out that conundrum.
And saying goodbye to your pal, your friend, that person, that human being that you loved and you thought that you would spend your twilight years with, sharing, laughing, and that friendship that comes with that.
Yes. So, take some thinking about. But it's fine. I'm incredibly lucky. I'm healthy. I've got 3 healthy children. I'm comfortable, so in many ways, I'm incredibly lucky. It's just everything is around this great volcanic crater of a hole. But that's okay, we get on with it.
But as you were getting on with it, as you were dealing with the loss of your soulmate, There was more devastating loss within your family.
Well, yes. So then my aunt, who was born in Essex, another Essex connection, she had bowel cancer, died in 2016, and then Mum developed cancer. She had fantastic treatment here, actually. Mum had a big tumour in her face, and Sinclair Gore did some fantastic work, plastic surgeon here in Oxford. But then that metastasised to her lungs, so she died in summer last year. Again, June. It was June a year ago. And then Dad couldn't really cope after that, so he died in September. So been around quite a lot of end of life. But again, that's okay. To me, it's like, well, okay, in whatever time I've got left, I've got to get on and do something.
So it is literally how you deal with it, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I think I've got more energy and positivity to do things now. Hence the, let's get out and do something for a charitable walk across the country.
Which is fantastic, because you could think, well, the world is against me. I feel very alone. Of course, yes, I've got the children, but I'm devastated by this, and I'm just going to hold myself up in four walls.
Oh, well, I think there are days like that. If you ask my children, they say, "Oh, Daddy cries all the time." So yeah, absolutely. But their lives are ahead of them. What I've discovered as well, you've probably talked with other people on the show about this, is I'm now even closer to my mother-in-law, Heather's mum. But what I've discovered, and it's taken me years to discover this, that we share the loss, but the loss of a daughter, a spouse, and a mum are three completely different things, because where you are in your life, if you see what I mean. So Heather's mum feels I shouldn't have survived my daughter. My kids are saying, well, mum is not going to be at my wedding. And I'm, as you said, I'm thinking, well, what happens with the rest of my life? So we share a loss, but it's a very different thing.
But I suppose, you also want to make the Heather's life worthwhile, that short life that she had, worthwhile with a legacy. And I suppose what you're doing now is part her. This is her legacy, and that legacy is about positivity and the future.
Yes, I think there's a sort of notion I've got to live life at top speed. I've almost got to live two lives. Does that make sense?
52 degrees north.
Yes.
This is a significant number. As you mentioned actually a little earlier, you are staring at 52 in the face.
Yes, and I think it's an age of confidence. I've read some research reports that say, I think particularly for women, there's something about body confidence peaks at 52.
I look forward to it.
And I think it's an age where you sort of settle a little bit. Maybe your children are just, coming through school, depending on what's happened, if you've been lucky enough to have children. So, yes, it's a key age, and I'm 52 at the end of this walk. But as I say, lots of other resonance. My sort of heritage, my parents' families were from Essex and Gloucestershire and South Wales. And also lots of connections with the parallel right across the country. So I had family holidays at this latitude. And Oxford's a big connection. My sister was at university here in the 80s, and my daughter's boyfriend lives just down the road in Jericho. So lots of connections with Oxfordshire. And I sliced through the north of Oxfordshire on the 12th of July.
This isn't just about walking a whole load of miles, is it? It's about, we talk about the positivity and actually the things that the awareness, I suppose, for certain things that you want to achieve when you are walking into areas like Oxfordshire.
200%, Kat. So it's not a big physical feat. It's not John O'Groat Land's End. It's not 800 miles. It's only...
Well, that's been done before. I don't know whether this has.
Well, you've seen Coast on the telly, the TV programme. One of the presenters is Nick Crane, former president of the Royal Geographic Society. 20 years ago, he walked north-south from Berwick-upon-Tweed to Swanage on the meridian 2 degrees west and wrote a book about it. So he walked in a straight line north-south, and I'm now completing the cross.
Well, you've got to write a book about it as well, haven't you?
Well, maybe. We'll see. But you're right. It's not a big physical... I'm only doing 12, 15 miles a day, but each day I meet someone at an amazing place. So, for example, on day one in Suffolk, where 52 degrees hits the Suffolk coast is Bawdsey Radar Museum, which was the first operational radar station in the world. And Watson Watt developed radar in the 1930s, and that was what really helped us win the Battle of Britain in 1940. So interesting for me that, 75 years later, we still haven't resolved our relationship with Europe. So that's one example. But then when I cross the Greenwich Meridian, there's Wisbridge Solar Park. So that's a future-looking piece. And then there's a wind farm in Wales. Every single day I visit somewhere. And as I've been phoning up these places and saying, oh, I'm doing a silly walk, could I come and see you? Everyone has been so positive about the idea. And it's sort of as if I've discovered the whole country is looking for some unification and some positivity, if that makes sense, along a literal cross-section. So you couldn't be more random than just drawing a line across the country. It happens to be 52 degrees. And I think if you took any cross-section of our country, you'd find some amazing stuff. So despite what the news says about the negativity and the divisions in the country, I think I'll find some incredible positivity and unity.
I think you're right. You'll certainly find a lot of that in Oxfordshire. So tell me about who you're going to meet, what you're going to do, the message for Oxfordshire.
So, as I say, I come to Oxford. I'm doing it in week-long stages. So there's Suffolk and Essex in week 1, and then Hertfordshire, Bedfordshire, Buckinghamshire in week 2, and then I come into Oxfordshire week 3, so the beginning of July. And I slice to the north of Oxford, just off of Deddington. And of course, your listeners will know much more about this. I'm looking to discover more. Named after Dada the Saxon, who that's his settlement 1,000 years ago. And then I discovered this on a test. I did this section as a test stretch. And the Woodland Trust, which has been around since the 1970s, the sort of national charity for woods who protect and restore and plant woods, and we've got to plant more and more trees, haven't we, to get more and more carbon out of the atmosphere. They planted about 20 years ago 200 millennium woods, and they were local woods. They called them woods on your doorstep, and the first one of those was Dada's Wood, which is just a little bit north of Deddington. So I'm going to meet Annette, who's the chair of the Friends of Dada's Wood in Deddington. And I'm also talking to the Woodland Trust head office in Lincolnshire. And the idea of these local woods is that the local community planted the trees to make a local amenity. And the other lovely connection, because it borders the River Swere, the Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire Wildlife Trust have made it an otter halt at the edge of the wood, and my parents were lifelong members of Bebout as well, so that's another lovely connection. But that's as far as my knowledge goes now. I'm looking forward to discovering more as I talk to Annette and the Woodland Trust about that, and I think that'll be the story right across the country. I'll discover more and more, and that's maybe where the book will come.
Because of the... Good. Because of the connections, with your parents and everything else, how do you think that they would feel about what you're doing? I mean, Heather particularly.
I think she'd think my map fetish has got slightly out of control. I've got it in the bag, I won't get it out, but I've made a map at 1 to 25,000 scale across the country.
So you've always had a map fetish?
Oh, yes. Well, I used to, on the back of Ordnance Survey maps, it has the little chart there, and I used to think, I wonder if you've got all the maps that go right across the country, and now I've done it. So, yes, the map thing she used to keep it moderated, but now it's got out of control.
Would this have surprised her, because she was the one person that knew you better than anybody else?
Yes, I think so. And the other thing is, it's not about me. Yes, there's my story. Maybe that's the beginning to it in terms of getting a bit of a walk to feel better. But it's grown into this sort of British positivity thing. That's why I've called it 52 in Britain, if that makes sense. And particularly for the young people. So there's lots of ancient history. So in Essex, there's Headingham Castle, where I'll be talking to your colleagues at BBC Essex and talking to my Essex charity, the Wilderness Foundation. So there's lots of history. That's a great Norman castle. But also it's the future point. My children are young adults now, and the rest of their 21st century lives are ahead. So it's saying, right, we need to get carbon out of the atmosphere, and we need to find sustainable energy. So that's really why my charity is around children, trees and energy, if that makes sense.
No better charities than those.
I could do cancer, but I'm sort of done with cancer. We've done a lot with cancer over the years. Now I want to look forward, if that makes sense.
As part of the fundraising, if anybody wants to
yes.
get on board.
So I've got a website, 52inbritain.co.uk, and I'll be blogging there, and I'll be putting weekly video summaries on there as well. And then all the links to the Just Giving page are on 52inbritain.co.uk.
I hope you've got some comfy walking boots. It probably took you a little while to find the perfect pair.
We've been clearing my parents' house, and it actually goes on the market next week because we've been clearing since they died last year, and that was a target to get it done before I start the walk. As part of that clearing, I found my dad's walking boots. I'll get upset now. So I'm walking in his boots, which is I think is a lovely thing.
It certainly is. Richard, it's been an absolute delight to meet you. I wish you the best of luck. And can we keep in contact with you whilst you're doing this?
If it's possible to talk around that 12th of July, that'd be lovely as I come through Oxfordshire. Thank you very much.
We'll give you a bell. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thanks, Kat.
Thank you.